right, welcome back, everyone. Thanks again for joining us today. We have a really amazing group of startup founders who are ready to share with you what they have been building and continue to build, how they're changing the game here in Texas and beyond. As I mentioned earlier, these startups have been awarded SBIR funding for a combined total well over $150 million, working in coordination with the Texas Military Department. And we're excited to learn from them about how they have paved that path of success for themselves. And then also for those of you out there who are looking to work more with the DoD, you're going to learn a lot from this group. So I hope you stay tuned. And with that, I'd like to bring back to the stage Major Alex Goldberg. Stoichi, welcome, and take it away.
Appreciate it, John. As a quick recap of just TMDx, right? The vision of this Joint Innovation Unit is to be America's Pathfinder is how we can leverage a state military, right? The 24,000 people that we have in our organization, with over 60 facilities and bases throughout the state. How do we leverage all of that, right? Our people, facilities, and equipment to tap into the innovation within our communities? And how do we inspire them, engage them, support them, right? Support our people who have great ideas and we're just helping them bring them to fruition, or academia and industry really connect with the DoD, whether it's talking with an actual guardsman, someone who's an airman and a soldier who has the experience that can provide use cases and analysis of their technology, informal feedback, all the way to being able to help them connect with actual DoD contracts. And so I'm really looking forward to introducing just 4 of the 30 companies that you had said that have won over a total of $150 million of these innovation research contracts. We have been working with a number of different organizations that we believe, right, within our community can be game-changing for our nation. These conclude even just from DARPA that have highlighted many of these companies here in Texas that are working on novel diagnostics, therapeutics, and personal protective equipment here for COVID. Novel materials that will help scramjet engines, be produced 5 times cheaper and 4 times larger than currently capable. Next generation in mixed reality headsets that provide 220 degrees field of view, infinite field of depth, and eliminates motion sickness compared to current technology. Or predictive maintenance to help our aging fleet of aircraft and vehicles maintain readiness and resiliency. And so, needless to say, I'd like to first bring on our first panel member, Blake Teipel from Ascentium, and here is their story.
Imagine a world in which you can 3D print parts, metal, carbon fiber, polymers for aircraft, vehicles, or any other weapon system, anytime, anywhere. That the promise of commercial-grade additive manufacturing is truly realized both in cost and scalability. We can ease the burdens of our supply chains, maintenance personnel, and vehicle operators. We can transform military logistics and usher in a new era of expeditionary parts production. The Texas National Guard is working on the next generation of 3D printing that is 15 times faster and 5 times cheaper. We found this technology in our local community here in Texas in a company called Ascentium. We sponsored them for an AFWERX Small Business Innovation Research Grant, and they were awarded $750,000. The Texas Military Department took possession of an Ascentium high-speed extrusion printer, and after extensive experimentation, developing tooling, molding, fixtures, and jigs for our Black Hawk Combat Aviation Brigade, F-16 Fighter Wing, and C-130 Airlift Wing, we're ready to expand this capability further.
Coronavirus here in the U.S.
0.7 million cases of COVID-19.
3 to 6 month delay for essential items, including.
Imagine a world with crumbling logistical chains, where demand exceeds supply and the very safety of those we care about is at stake. The Guard is facing this world right now with an enemy we can't see. The solution requires speed and flexibility, ingenuity, and innovation. TMDx, the Texas Military Department Innovation Unit, was called into action to support the Texas Governor's Strike Force to help solve critical challenges in the response to this COVID-19 pandemic. These include a shortage of ventilators, masks, and other personal protective equipment. In partnership with Ascentium, we designed and were awarded FDA emergency use authorization for a 3D printed mask with replaceable filters that are 10 times cheaper to produce than our current supply chains. Now, Texas Guardsmen and first responders around the state have the critical PPE they need to ensure their safety. Next, we are working to print parts for emergency ventilators and the production of material that is both antiviral and antimicrobial. The Air Force created a new program with the Small Business Innovation Research Office called Air Force Ventures to take strategic bets in promising game-changing technologies. Ascentium, in partnership with the Texas Guard and the Air Force Materials Command, was selected as one of the winners by the Secretary of the Air Force. Through this program, the Air Force will double any investment the National Guard Bureau puts into Ascentium. Our ask? By supporting us with a total of $8 million over the next 4 years, and the Air Force match, we'll be able to take that $16 million to scale this technology throughout Guard Nation. We have leveraged this unique capability of being citizen soldiers and airmen to bring this to fruition. The National Guard Bureau can take a leadership role with the Department of Defense to bring adaptive and secure logistics that will not only save billions, but will greatly enhance our readiness, resilience, and ultimately, our national security.
Yeah, Blake, I appreciate you and everything that you've done in working with the Texas Military Department up to this point. If you could tell the folks, right, that was just one video of which, as we have been working together, had set you guys up for success with potential future contracts. But before we get into that, I just want to let the audience know a little bit about you, your story, your journey, and that of your company, if you want to highlight that.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Blakey. Thanks for the organizers of the event. I'm from Colorado originally. Grew up in the mountains. Kind of, skied a whole lot, rafted, all that. I got into mechanical engineering in undergrad, but I'd had an internship actually working for the government. So back in 2006, I worked for NASA at the Marshall Space Flight Center on the analysis of little pieces of skin from the International Space Station. And I was just struck by the ability of the government, but then I was also struck by the inefficiency of the government at that time in that context. And so, I went into private commercial enterprise, worked for some large, classic manufacturing companies in kind of the American heartland. Eventually went back to graduate school to focus on materials science because I was enthralled by 3D printing and what it could do, but wanted to make 3D printing more productive. And so, in essence, we launched Ascentium, focusing on materials first, and then expanded the franchise to also work on very fast machines, with the entire notion the whole time saying, how can I use this in factory contexts, in manufacturing and in fabrication to make tomorrow's devices, consumer electronics, footwear, planes, trains, and cars, all of that has to go through a factory setting. And, henceforth, additive manufacturing had not really provided a value proposition to actual manufacturing. So we launched Ascentium to do that. We were laser focused on, commercial enterprise and on, just factory contexts. And then, we met you guys, Stoic TMD, and kind of, became exposed really to the needs that Guard Nation has, relative not so much to the manufacturing context, but to expeditionary part production, point of service production. And we started to gain visibility to this, supply chain challenge that it is to run and operate and maintain and sustain a cutting edge, force worldwide in any weather at any time. And so I just became intrigued, and I thought to myself, well, gosh, if there's a way that we can take the commercially focused models and commercially focused solutions and pivot those to apply over here to the government, maybe we have found an organization within the government that is moving at a speed and kind of, the pace basically would match our pace. And so, needless to say, we started about a year ago now, actually interfacing with TMD, looking at, proof of value projects for 3D printing related to end of service and end of life, for ground vehicles and air vehicles, leveraging the amazing expertise of machinists and other specialists who perform critical maintenance items, and saying, okay, the skill sets are there to operate printers. The kind of generic sort of Main Street knowledge of what 3D printing is pretty much also there. Let's connect the dots between kind of that general knowledge and deep expertise with this productive solution, and that's what we've been working on doing. So it's a brief kind of intro, I guess. Oh, Stoic, I think you're on mute, bud.
Appreciate it. Can you talk about a little bit in regards to the actual technology? Like, what are the value propositions of your printers? What kind of materials do you print? What are the things that right on the civilian side, who's backing you? where are you guys at in your startup, roadmap?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, we're 7 years in on the startup journey. So we're really kind of hitting a growth stage, I would say, in terms of like kind of where our startup is. We had done a couple of phase 1 and even into phase 2 SBIR awards through the National Science Foundation in the early days. But again, just looking for that opportunity to kind of, do what the DoD is trying to do, which is sort of help these young companies cross that valley of death, so that when the DoD says, yes, we're ready, that doesn't actually result in like a hug of death that kind of, crushes the startup. So we have a very fast printer that uses motion systems that came from semiconductor capital equipment, anything with a circuit board. So we move really fast. And then we use extrusion technology that has been honed over many years of making thermoplastic composites. And we basically push the polymer really fast, goes through the nozzle, and it builds parts really fast. So those are a couple of things we do that are distinct. Oh, I think you're back on mute.
No, appreciate it, Blake. I really appreciate, you providing a little bit of context of your technology, and look forward to bringing you back a little bit later to discuss, your integration with the DoD, momentarily.
Yeah.
Next panel member that I'm going to bring on board is Evan Loomis from Icon. They 3D print buildings. Yes, that's a thing. So without further ado, Evan, here is your company, Icon.
We're doing something that is just barely possible. It's just this side of science fiction. But it doesn't matter how hard it is or how risky it is. We know something has to be done. Icon is a construction technologies company working in 3D printing construction. Our mission is to make dignified housing accessible to everyone, everywhere.
So we believe the future of home building is 3D printing. We don't see this as a novel concept. We see this as the way that people will ultimately build houses. This provides us an opportunity to kind of do things at scale faster than have ever been done before.
The idea is that with many robotic machines out in the wild, these machines can, at scale, develop housing for many, many people.
Austin, Texas is home of a lot of innovation, and I think one of the most innovative organizations in our town is an organization called Community First.
Community First is a 51-acre master plan community designed to lift the chronically homeless, and we're talking the most lost and forgotten men and women that you see standing on our street corners, living under our bridges, alleyways, urban camps, and our shelters, into a place that they can call home.
Having the opportunity to work with Alan Graham and Community First Village was a dream come true.
We printed a visitor center for them, and it's just stunning.
Icon is pushing the envelope, and they're laying out technologically a new way of looking at how do we build, and we're the perfect place on the planet, I think, to experiment with that.
We're now embarking on a journey to print a series of homes at Community First this year, and this is just the beginning.
Hey, Evan. I appreciate you joining us today. It's good seeing you.
Stoichi, it's good to be here.
Absolutely. So if you could tell people, I know a lot of people are unfamiliar with 3D, additive, construction scale additive manufacturing, and interested in your journey. How did you, where did this idea come from? What is really the mission of that organization? You can tell us about that technology and kind of where you guys are at right now.
Absolutely. Icon started with a mission to solve the housing crisis in America. There's also a global housing crisis where about 1.1 billion of our brothers and sisters around the world don't have adequate shelter. And it's called the global housing crisis for a reason, because costs have continued to go up. The quality of shelter has gone down over time. And this is one of those things that kept us up at night, and we wanted to solve it. And we think that the rest of the world has used robotics and software and advanced materials in very novel ways to make better things faster and cheaper, except for the house. And you have to have a house. It's a basic human need. And so that's where Icon kind of put its shoulder to the world, really. And we started a few years ago. We just were self-funding it, basically to try to solve this critical issue. And we 3D printed the first house in America, and our hair has been on fire ever since then. And if you're kind of imagining, I think if you saw some of the videos, we extrude concrete a lot like toothpaste is extruded from, a toothpaste bottle. It's pretty magical, and it's incredibly resilient building material. It's very strong. It's the kind of thing that's going to last hundreds of years. And so we're really proud about our progress. And probably the best thing that's happened to us is we were intercepted by Stoichi in the Texas Military Department. Because we're dead set on a civilian use, just to provide homes for the people that needed it the most. And so with the military, we're dreaming even bigger and doing things that are even harder to do to provide a shelter and infrastructure solution for the military as well. So we're very proud to be here and very proud to be associated with the Texas Military Department.
No, appreciate it, Evan. If you could talk a little bit about some of the value propositions of like how fast can you actually print a building, and what are some of the projects that you guys have already done to showcase the maturity of the technology?
Sure. The value propositions are at a high level, like speed and cost and unlimited design freedom. If you wanted to 3D print a Fibonacci spiral, you can do that. I wouldn't advise it, but you can make things in very unique shapes, and so not everything has to have a right angle to it. Basically, resiliency is another one, and survivability. And so as we thought about how to deploy this technology specifically with all those attributes in mind, we made a decision. We didn't want to pick our battles. We wanted to fight and win every single one of them. And so it had to be faster. It had to be less expensive. It had to be more resilient. It had to be survivable, all these things. And I think where we're at today is something that achieves all of those. We've got a long way to go. And I don't want to present that we've arrived, but the future is definitely pointing towards this automation technology and advanced materials for these solutions. And so if you want to cost, the first house that we did, the very rudimentary first house, we did it in about 47 hours at quarter speed, which is very slow. If we were to use the concrete again today, it'd just be a couple $1,000s of concrete. Concrete is the most resilient, and it also happens to be the cheapest building material on Earth, which is one of the reasons why we use it.
And is this something that, right, on the civilian sector, I mean, is this to code? Is this something that you can print right now and actually, have a building that someone can buy, in theory?
Yeah, everything's to code. We've passed the most stringent building standards in the nation, which are basically here in Austin, Texas. We've also 3D printed in zones where there's earthquakes. And so this is the kind of thing that's not niche for hipsters wearing skinny jeans. It works in all parts of the world in a bunch of different contexts, and it's remarkably easy to use. All you need is an iPhone and obviously the machinery, and you select the building that you want. Our algorithms that we use to print are structural algorithms, and so they're not going to print anything that is not structurally sound. Our worst case scenario is somebody gets hurt, and so we're taking every precaution we can to make sure that these are durable, long-lasting structures.
Well, Evan, I appreciate you joining us on the panel here, and look forward to discussing a little bit more with the rest of the group, your technology and how it's being applied to the DoD use case. For our next panel member, we have Matt Chasen from Lift Aircraft, right, helping us be a part of this program called Agility Prime from the Air Force that is really trying to usher in this new era of urban air mobility. And so without further ado, let's see a little bit more about Lift Aircraft.
These days, we're all going nowhere fast, with drivers spending the equivalent of 2.5 work weeks a year stuck in traffic. Makes you fantasize about flying above it all, just like the Jetsons. But now that dream is becoming a reality. Here, in a top-secret facility in the hills outside Austin, Texas, we got an exclusive sneak peek at the future of transportation. This passenger drone, called the Hexa, is an ultralight aircraft powered by 18 electric propellers. It seats one, goes more than 60 miles an hour, and flies up to 1,200 feet in the air. Its creators at Lyft Aircraft, no relation to the ride-sharing service, say the Hexa is so easy to fly, you don't even need a pilot's license.
The first time you took this job, what did that feel like?
Woo, exciting.
Lyft CEO Matt Chasen says rapid advances in drone technology mean in the next decade, this is how many of us may be going from point A to B.
The average commutes can take up to 90 minutes in traffic. Electric aircraft have the possibility to bring that down to just 7 to 10 minutes.
So what is it like to actually fly the Hexa? Well, for the sake of liability, I'm not going to be taking it up today. But in just a few short months, anyone can have the chance to take this on their own test flight. And experts say the potential for passenger drones is literally sky high.
Major companies like Airbus and Boeing are already developing them.
And just last month, ride-sharing giant Uber held a summit for federal regulators to promote its Uber Elevate project, a fleet of electric air taxis that the company plans to launch in major cities as early as 2023.
For air taxis to become a reality, the FAA has to develop new safety regulations, something Chasen says could take at least 5 years. To avoid delay, he's launching his Hexa as a recreational ride, available to thrill seekers in at least one U.S. city by year's end.
So this joystick is all you need to control. It's kind of like a video game.
To learn how to fly, customers will go through an hour of training in a simulator like this.
All right, I just went through a tree.
Then for $250, you'll get to take the Hexa up for 15 minutes over an uncongested area, with ground engineers able to take control remotely.
In the event of a catastrophic emergency, there is an autonomous ballistic parachute that deploys.
So worst case scenario, you're still floating back down to Earth.
You get a parachute ride back down.
Right now, drones like this cost about $200,000, but Chasen says that the technology spreads, prices will fall.
In the future, you could own one of these, have it in your garage, wheel it out, and fly to work.
Well, welcome back, Matt. I appreciate you sharing that video with us. Great to see you again.
Likewise, great to be here. Thank you.
So tell us about your story. I mean, obviously, you're a serial entrepreneur that got to this point. Tell us a little bit about your background and how Lyft came to be. Let's start with there.
Yeah, sounds great. So I started my career. Well, first of all, growing up, I was always fascinated with flight, in particular, flying cars. So I was one of these nerdy kids who, read all Popular Science, Popular Mechanics magazines, and we were all promised flying cars, right? But never came to fruition. So I studied mechanical and aerospace engineering and actually started my career, a brief internship at NASA, and then started my career at Boeing. And while at Boeing, I got my pilot's license, so experimented with flying myself. Enjoyed my time at Boeing, but actually moved back to Texas, to UT, to get my MBA. And while at UT, started a technology logistics company called UShip. So I've been in Austin for a long time. Had kind of my first go around with the startup. It was quite successful here. But all the while, I was watching all this new technology being developed for small drones. With distributed electric propulsion, modern lithium batteries, drone flight control systems. And, my brain started cranking on, can we scale this up so that we can create the first real viable consumer flying machines that really anyone can fly? And so that was the foundation for Lyft Aircraft. And it sort of pivoted, from the concept being start as an entertainment experience because there's no FAA certification required or a pilot's license required for that ultralight class. And then, very quickly, we recognized that under ultralight rules, you can also fly for public use missions, any federal, state, local government missions without certification, accessible. And there's amazing opportunities to leverage this tech for both military and public use missions to do a lot of good, as well as, let people have fun.
No, fantastic. And how far is this technology from actually materializing into fruition here? That we can actually start seeing air mobility.
I'm really pleased to say part of our strategy in focusing on a small, pure multi-rotor hover aircraft means that we don't need any groundbreaking technological advances, right? Some of the larger aircraft need more power dense batteries. So we are actually flying. That's a real aircraft, one of our 3 flying prototypes. We have over 500 test flights accomplished over 10 hours of total flight time, which is basically almost completion of our first phase of flight testing. Now, we're so confident in that we've actually started low-rate production of our aircraft. We have a Tier 1 composite structures supplier who's actually just recently delivered our first production structure that we're putting together now. Beautiful tooling. We're super excited. It's coming, it's looking great, underway. And we actually have partners, including the U.S. Air Force Agility Prime, who we're allocating these first production aircraft to do demonstrations, flight testing, DoD airworthiness certification, and evaluations for different public use missions.
No, fantastic, Matt. Pleasure to have you on board, and it's been a pleasure working with you up to this point. The next and our last panel member is going to be Gareth Block from Third Insight, which is really working on the cutting edge of artificial intelligence that we were fortunately able to find. And one of the programs that I was a part of the National Security Innovation Network was actually being embedded in them, in that company, in that startup, and seeing how they did business. And so without further ado, we'll share Third Insight's video.
The secret about artificial intelligence is that it's not really that intelligent. For over 5 decades, computers have become faster, machine learning techniques have been optimized, but the world's most advanced AI is still unable to adapt to the constantly evolving changes of the real world. The AI of today ignores the contextual understanding that humans take for granted. For example, that stop signs are hexagonal in shape, are colored red, and are found at the intersection of roads to prevent vehicle collisions. Our company is called Third Insight, and for the last 4 years, we have created a new type of artificial intelligence that uses a top-down, reasoning-based approach to solve problems that are impossible for other AI. This breakthrough was accomplished by integrating knowledge graphs, which define what things are and how they relate to one another. Sensor fusion, which leverages multiple modalities, auditory, visual, multispectral, and several others to gain a context of an environment. And our patented reasoning engine, that when combined with these other elements, provides machines with contextual awareness and common sense. And we built this software using an open architecture and hardware agnostic framework with DoD compliant cybersecurity at the forefront, and requiring limited compute resources so it can be deployed on practically any machine to solve real problems in the real world. Imagine a world where a drone or a ground vehicle can play hide and seek. It can perceive its environment to ensure it's not detected while collecting vital intelligence. Or it can autonomously search a building to identify potential hazards, to track hard targets or detect unknown threats, to discover survivors in ways only humans do today, and then to recommend the safest paths for ingress and egress. We are currently on contract with the Department of Homeland Security, Air Force Research Lab, Space Directorate, AFWERX, and the Air Force Installation Mission Support Command on projects that apply this technology, giving machines the ability to conduct fully autonomous inspections of Air Force aircraft, environmental surveys on military installations, and to perform search and rescue operations in GPS-denied environments. Join us on our journey to bring about this next generation of artificial intelligence, to enable a new kind of human-machine teaming and autonomous behaviors that enhance our country's readiness, resilience, and ultimately our national security.
Hey, Gareth. Well, pleasure you joining us today. Looks like we got the same haircut. So if you could tell us a little bit about your background. Obviously, it's impressive technology that I've had a firsthand glimpse into. And if you could tell me a little bit about how that came to be. How did you put your life force into developing that and creating the company that you have now?
Well, thanks, Storky. And actually, before I start, I just want to say thank you to the Texas Military Department. When we started this company 4 years ago, I had done a PhD in applied math and had always wanted to build a general intelligence that could be used for everything from intelligent drone and navigation problems to intelligent agents that would work with us. It wasn't until you and I really got deep into the business model of what that would look like going into military and dual purpose technologies that I really started to understand the breadth of what we could do and how we could do it. And so I just want to, just at the beginning, say thank you to you and the Texas National Guard, the Air National Guard, for allowing us to build out an autonomy platform that would, I think, bring a lot of what we're building to fruition. When I started, and the company now is about 9 or 10 people. We're doing extremely well, but the technology itself is quite fundamental, right? So we patented some this idea of deep learning and knowledge graphs last year. But for us to migrate that into an autonomous platform that can really solve the challenges, again, that most AI on the market today can't really even dream of, these are the kinds of things such as like spatial reasoning, understanding context, bringing situational awareness, playing hide and seek with the enemy. All of those things are really outside the scope. And so for us to bring that to bear is going to probably take another 12 months or so. And so we're just really grateful to be able to play out those concepts at National Guard bases over the next 12 months as part of the cyber stuff that we're working on.
No, that's fantastic, Gareth. At this time, I'd actually like to bring all the other panel members on board and have a collaborative discussion, right, between myself and obviously very familiar with all of you and how we work together. First question that I want to just be able to throw out there is, when you guys created those businesses, whether it's the 3D printing of buildings or parts or your airlift or Gareth, your artificial intelligence, was the DoD in that vertical? Was that something that you guys had planned? When I'm creating this business, the DoD is absolutely somebody I wanted to work with. And we'll go around the room just as if we started. So we'll start with Blake.
No, not at all. I didn't conceptualize that we would be working with the DoD, not because the DoD was a bad fit for 3D printing or because the DoD would make a bad customer. Just I didn't know how to get into the DoD. I didn't know how to access the marketplace, and there was such a pace mismatch that I perceived that I didn't think it'd be a fit, for us, at least not in the early stages of our company. But I was wrong, in those things, and I'm happy to say that now. And we're starting at the state level, I think, really opened the door and unlocked a lot of other conversations with Big Air Force and AFRL and LCMC EZP and these other centers. But that all started at the state level. Folks knowing us, meeting us, and helping to be our Sherpa to take us into the big leagues across the enterprise.
No, fantastic, Blake. Same question to you, Evan. When you guys started, trying to solve the homeless crisis, was the DoD in that vertical?
Not really. There were a couple of things that happened. I had a buddy that was in Special Operations Command that said, "Hey, I bet you could print a forward operating base." And I was like, "I have no idea what a forward operating base is. Like, give me the decoder ring and help me understand what this means." And so I remember hearing that. And then over the course of the next year, as we started talking with investors, and we said, "Hey, we think there may be a DoD opportunity here with our business," investors started giving us a little bit of pushback on like, "Hey, I've heard the government is really hard to work with. That may really hurt your valuation as a startup company. So just be eyes wide open, be super careful about partnering with the DoD. Because they may slow you down or make you go sideways." And so there just wasn't a lot of good information out there for a startup founder like myself. I have personally found that, yeah, there is a tremendous opportunity to 3D print forward operating bases, as my special operations buddy mentioned, and so much more. In the DoD, in part because of these tiny innovation units within each of the branches, and obviously the Texas Military Department, are making it easy for startup founders like me to kind of plug in, because they can be your, like Stoiky said, your Sherpa throughout the process. And so I was a skeptic, and now I'm a believer, and I'm super bullish on our prospects within the broader DoD.
No, that's fantastic. I mean, same thing with you, Matt. You know, when you were creating Lyft, did you think that the DoD and what service, you know, would be in that vertical, would be in that business model that you would really spend tech cycles on developing for?
You know, not at all. Actually, there's a lot of investment in electric VTOL technologies globally, but in the U.S. there hasn't been much government-sponsored research and development, you know, so we were focused on you know, a market that we could penetrate early, the ultralight recreational market, thinking that, you know, military use and transportation use would be pretty far off. And we were really just in the right place at the right time. As you know, kind of right as we started flying our first prototypes, all of a sudden, you know, we found out about this new Agility Prime initiative from the Air Force, and amazing vision on their behalf. They don't want to see the same thing happen to the manned eVTOL market as happened with small drones. The supply chain, you know, going overseas to countries, you know, we don't like very much sometimes. And, you know, so they're investing heavily as a strategic, you know, national interest in eVTOL excellence in the US. And so we were fortunate in that we're kind of right place at the right time for that. And yeah, we're going to need a lot of investment and development, and partnering with the Air Force on certification and other things is going to really help us, you know, accelerate our development.
No, appreciate it. You know, same thing to Gareth, but if you can articulate, and we'll go back around in regards to, you know, so obviously there's been some hesitation. Maybe it wasn't in your roadmap initially when you first founded the company, but what changed? And when trying to navigate the DoD, right, there's all these different innovation units. What have you seen as the value proposition that TMD has provided to help you, you know, brave that world that you were hesitant to join and are being, you know, and thriving and being successful in right now?
Building commercial technology and trying to understand what that would look like. And over the last couple of years, as everyone I think in the community here knows, Austin and Capital Factory and all of the kind of defense-oriented capital players started building out their space here. At that point, I think I started to understand that maybe there was a way to get into that space, and I didn't really understand. And then, I mean, honestly, when Stoichi, when you embedded yourself in our company for 3 months, it was at that moment that I realized, and I should tell everybody, I mean, and I think you guys are individually this way as well. You start these companies because you have a life force that you want to invest yourself into. You only get one shot at life. I mean, you're going to die tomorrow. You better spend it well. And so, and that's actually how everybody in my company feels. We're not doing this. We're doing this to make good amounts of money, but we're doing this because we love the problem set and we want to articulate it and solve the problem as best we can. So when I met Stoichi and he articulated that actually the warfighter mission is as valuable as any other mission I could devote myself to, and I found that we resonated so strongly with it. I realized that we were actually a mission-driven company, and our mission was to deploy this artificial intelligence in the way that was best for. I mean, I'm a patriot, so for the U.S. So TMD, I mean, really helped us navigate that space, and General Farrell and through Stoichi allowed us to operate on the National Guard bases, the air bases throughout Texas, and it's been a great boon. And so it's made everything possible.
No, I appreciate it, Gareth. And you know, I'll go back to, you know, Evan and Blake real quick in regards to, so now being integrated with TMD and being able to access our people, facilities, and equipment, how has that been leveraged to contracts and other DoD partners from that to help, you know, providing you a pathway to actually transition to a program of record, which is right this valley of the shadow of death. So what has been your experience, and where are you guys at now?
I guess for Ascentium, so we were so two things. So we were, when the COVID crisis was kind of spinning up in Texas back in March. I think everybody was kind of wondering, what does this mean for the state? Are we going to get hit? If so, how badly and where? And how do we respond? So we were contacted by TMD as part of the the leadership of the government had asked for TMD to play in fill in the gaps and providing for the public, providing for our communities, our hospitals, our frontline workers medically. So, we built a bunch of 3D printed face mask kits and supplied those. So that was just gratifying to be part of that project, to be able to leverage kind of the expertise on printing high volume quantities of parts, tens of thousands of parts quickly. And then over on the big Air Force side, we were able to matriculate into this StratFi program, which is this basically a fintech innovation that the Secretary of the Air Force for Acquisitions put in place to really help the government be able to match the funding needs and the funding speeds for small, fast-moving growth stage enterprise. So that's been our journey.
No, fantastic, and Evan as well. And just one question from the audience. I see Raul asked, will the Air Force match the $8 million that the National Guard's putting in? And the short answer is yes. So we were able to get them access to $16 million of capital to help scale 3D printing for expeditionary, part production. So Evan, a little bit about where your company is now and the other DoD, organizations that now that we've introduced you into the DoD, winning the Phase 2 contract, where you guys are at right now, and then you also have a unique story in regards to not all of our nation states around the world share our values, and there's a unique story that I would like you to talk about of other investors trying to reach out to you to be able to leverage their technology for themselves.
You bet, Stoicky. I'll be brief. So where we're at now is we had this wonderful gal named Jen Mars, who is a tech scout for AFWorks, and I just want to give her a shout out. She quickly introduced me to the force of nature that is Stoicky Goldberg, and those were kind of my guides during this process. And so it started with the TMD, then we got on-ramps to the Air Force, we got on-ramps to the Marine Corps, and we got on-ramps to NASA. We're still waiting for the Army to answer our emails, but hopefully that happens sometime in the next year or two. So we're obviously very grateful for that. And without the TMD, we just wouldn't have had this kind of like effect to have conversations across the DoD. In terms of nation states and stuff like that, we can I talk about this, Dorky? Okay.
Yep,
yeah,
absolutely.
We were targeted pretty early on, which is not a unique story for an early stage technology company, by some of our adversaries overseas. And we've just been really fortunate, I think, to have had the national security, the NSA, the FBI, the CIA, the TMD, and a number of other organizations that have kind of leaned in and help us basically get our digital hygiene together. Because I think when you're an early stage company and you're just working on something kind of in your garage, you're a little bit surprised all of a sudden when you find out that a foreign actor is trying to steal what you got. And so, on top of the contracts and the revenue generating opportunities that are provided within the military, they're helping us make good decisions on how to not get our stuff stolen, who is friendly, who's a foe, how to navigate that whole kind of wild world that we live in. So I know I'm not alone in that, but it's pretty complex if you're dealing with it without someone like the TMD on your side of the table.
No, and we have 2 minutes left. I just wanted to, personally express my gratitude in working with each one of you. We have learned a tremendous about your world, as you've learned a tremendous about ours. And over this COVID period of time, over these last few months, I've been truly appreciative because each one of you, beyond just the technology and helping out, you've also served alongside us, a part of our innovation task force. When I called upon you, and we needed that help finding solutions for PPE, or Gareth, you led our team for emergency ventilators, and your engineering team pivoting from Blake being able to help 3D print mask and ventilator parts, and everything in between. At least from the bottom of my heart, thank you. Your contacts, even just your breadth of experience to help us, both Evan and Matt, to be able to acquire the PPE that our state needed, especially in that early times, was extremely valuable. And I just want to let the rest of the community know as well, this isn't just unique to them. We're here for you too. And we'd like you to join us as we're trying to prepare for any challenge our nation our community, our state has. So needless to say, I appreciate the panel. I appreciate that Capital Factory for hosting our launch, for General Langell, General Norris, General Farrell, and the rest of the TMD leadership putting this all together. So thank you. Appreciate it, Sean.